Sure.
So I'd like to do something a little different today, if you guys are okay with it. I've been thinking about the various 4D providers, and especially with my recent interactions with these ladies from Ukraine. And there's now two different groups in Ukraine that are doing 4D work, and a publisher wants to publish the book. So I was trying to think of a way to make. I've never been able to communicate what this is in an elevator speech. It's always taken more. So I was trying to think about this and decided to make a few slides I'd like to show you here, a little bit out of our normal practice, but I think this is interesting. Is this okay with you folks?
Yep.
So I thought one of the problems I have, I'm so involved with the work, I don't tend to put myself in more of the client's shoes. So I made a couple slides to try and do this better. And so it's kind of an inquiry. Would you like to better understand others and communicate more effectively? With 4D, what you can do is you can characterize people's innate personality as one of four colors. This is so easy that once you learn this, takes a couple hours, you can start doing this on your own. And I find conversations with people, I can point out colors, and people who color themselves find it very useful. Would you like to benchmark your team's performance against peer teams? And I find very few managers that don't want to do this. If you talk to them about training, they don't want to hear that. Talk to them about leadership, they don't want to hear that. You say to them, I've got a record of teams worldwide that I can benchmark your performance for your own interest. So that's something you'd like to do. And I'd say over 90% of them say, yeah, I'd like to do that. What do I have to do? And I said, well, it's 10 questions. And it's called the Team Development Accelerators. Right now, I'm supporting them in paper form, but there's lots of people who have online versions. This is the distribution function of teams, according to answering questions as to how they meet behavioral norms, and give a percent to those. And what you want to know is what quintile your team's in. If you're down here, you're in real trouble. If you're up here, success is virtually guaranteed. And with these processes, if you're down here, you can move up here in 18 months with some work. And people sometimes say to me, 18 months, a long time. I said, to change habits of behaviors? Nope, that's pretty fast, I think, actually. By the way, speak up anytime here. Would you like to enhance your team's performance? And again, team leaders really want to do this. They're people who have some implicit accountability, how the team performs or doesn't. And so, again, you can make reliable progress with these things, and you can track it with numbers. You can track it numerically. So people like the idea of seeing things improve and seeing scores. So it maybe takes them back to sporting events, this kind of thing. Would you like to improve your competitive advantage? And I've never known anyone in a business that didn't want to do this. And basically what we can do is motivate customers to want to select you. This is using a human function called confirmation bias. I think in your own experience, you probably are familiar with this. Most of us sort of make up our mind about what we want, and then we make up the reasons for why we should get it secondarily. So this generates that want, and people will ignore the data that are against you and give more emphasis to data that favors you. And this is one of my favorite things about this work. Would you like to manage your state of being? And particularly people would like to manage their stress level. And there's a way you can do this that's very simple, to choose your mindsets and get your stress back down. And people worry a lot about stress and health effects. So I thought this was a better way to do this than talk about the processes, to put it more in the space of what's interesting to users. You guys like this slide?
It absolutely makes sense. Definitely. This is good.
And then the idea of human physics, which is at the core of this methodology. And the first thing physicists do is we derive equations. Engineers go to books and get equations out and use them, but physicists like to make our own equations and do it over and over. And the best way to do it is from first principle reasoning. And basically you ask questions like a child, and like a child's, you got to eat your dinner. Why? Well, because you need food to grow. Why? Because if you don't grow, you'll just stay small. Why? Well, you won't be able to function in regular life unless you grow to an ordinary size. Okay. So it's like asking this why question over and over. And a first principle that I'm fond of is one enunciated by Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychologist. I think he was Swiss, maybe German, but I think Swiss. And he posited that people build their personality on innate, meaning present at birth, preferences for information and deciding. I love this kind of thing because we're down to a first principle, input and output. It's very simple.
Comment, Charlie. Questions.
Yes.
There's a French philosopher who said, to question is to destroy. Now, if you think about it, using questions is a very powerful tool, and it destroys perceptions. It destroys resistance, it destroys lack of knowledge, if you think of it in that way.
I think, yeah, that's interesting. So to me, the other side of this is reasoning by analogy, which is what most people do. Most people, it's lazy thinking. And its basis form, we've always done it this way. I mean, you hear that from people. And people reasoning by analogy, if I try and explain to someone why they should make preparations for climate change or the end of peak oil, the general thinking that's going on in their head is, yeah, that might be right, but nothing's happened yet, so I don't know why I have to do anything. So I'm going to talk more about this later. But this is the fundamental difference between going back to what's most basic and going to what your most recent experience is, which is more powerful for most people. That makes sense, Nico?
Absolutely. No, I'm all for this. Fan of questions and this.
Then
Carl Jung
Einstein famously said, by the way, I don't know if he actually said this or not, but I've read it several places, so I tend to believe it's right. Everything should be made as simple as possible, but not more so. And that resonates with me because in physics, simplicity is what we think is truth. So if you have a theory of how nature builds everything and it needs 100 objects to do it, physicists aren't interested. When you can do it with 12 quarks, that looks like truth to us. Da Vinci also said simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So in terms of going into an equation or a formula or a methodology using Young's work, I think the simplest thing is Cartesian coordinates. Descartes, who's famous for many things, including, I think, making a lot of trouble for our species, came up with this coordinate system, XY coordinate system. And from it, algebra and calculus advanced. So that's the simplest system I know. So if you want, excuse me, if you want to put Young's, I'm not getting sick. They did some sanding in here and there's sawdust everywhere. If you want to take the idea of information to deciding, you can put it on XY axis and call one information and one deciding, and which is kind of arbitrary. And in terms of information, I know the labels. There's basically two kinds of human information. Sense, what we get with our five senses, hearing, seeing, smelling, and so forth. And intuition, which is, I think, kind of an unconscious, fast integration of past experience. And I think that's as simple as you can get. And there's two ways we decide, using emotions, using logic, and humans do both. So this is a little tool we're going to use like F equals ma. F equals ma, Newton's second law, is the basis of all classical mechanics. You can do calculations to build a rocket or land somebody on the moon using that equation. And with this, we're going to analyze social context into something simpler. Just like a prism simplifies light into constituent colors, this system is going to simplify social matters into 4 parts I call dimensions. I just didn't like the word quadrants. That sounded so boring. So I named them dimensions. By the way, this is not a 4-dimensional space. I know what that is. Trust me. This is 4 dimensions and taking some license with the language. And go back to Jung's work to help us with this. What he said is if your primary function for information is intuition, primary deciding methodology, innate at birth, using emotions, that defines a personality that is appreciative, and I called it green and named it cultivating, because when you care for people, they grow. When you're in emotions as your primary deciding methodology and senses, it's about how you relate to people emotionally. This is about collaboration. Excuse me, I named it including because this is the deepest need relationally to feel included. And I called it yellow because I had better uses for the other primary colors. If you're an intuitive information and logical decider, this is people who love to think. That's me. I called it visioning. I named it blue for blue sky. And if you're into logical deciding in what sense, this is grounded heavily in reality. I called it directing, and I called it orange, like you can imagine how the sun organizes our solar system. So when I start to reflect on this, there's something much more fundamental and important than the personalities. These are basically 4 elements of human functioning that I think are absolutely essential. At any given moment of the day, someone's going to need to feel like you care about them, that you want to relate and include with them. You need creativity for new ideas, and you need organization to implement them. So this is the cornerstone of everything in this system, these 4 pieces. You can take things, they're just a blob, a social context, a culture of a group, a culture of a team. Look at it, don't know what to make of it, but you can dissect it into these 4 parts and look at the relative pieces of each one and gain a lot of understanding. Okay? Good. So what is a field? I've shown you this slide before. Trained people are familiar with the idea of a field. And that's a field, but that's not what we're talking about. That's not the kind of field. We're talking about the definition. This is Sean Carroll, one of my favorite theoretical physicists. A field is something that fills a space, taking on a value everywhere. So in this room, there's a scalar field, a temperature difference every place. If things are moving, there's a momentum field. And these are actually mathematical abstractions. I don't think fields are real except in mathematics. And we use them to understand action at a distance. This is what people early on called gravity and electromagnetism. Nobody understood. In fact, I don't think people still do understand, for example, how gravity works. But once we make the idea of a gravitational field, this imaginary mathematical construct, we can manipulate it, we can measure it, we can talk about it like it's real. And we measure fields with instruments. I built an instrument to measure a magnetic field. Human behaviors create social context fields. They're very similar. They have force. And by the way, until Einstein, physicists usually talked about forces. Einstein, with his field theories, convinced everybody that fields is a better way to talk about it. And just like we measure gravity and electromagnetism, we measure these social context fields by assessing human behaviors against standards. So we're trying to take very well understood concepts from science and apply them to a world of social where there is no, to my knowledge, no construct to do things like this. We good so far? Okay, thank you.
This is really helpful.
Great. Doing great. I really enjoy this one today. This is groundbreaking.
So Mother Nature has 4 fields. So I thought we'd talk about these and see how these might relate to the social context field. The gravity field, which you're familiar with, is very weak, but we believe has infinite range. It falls off as 1 over the distance squared. We don't know that for a fact, but that seems likely. And think about how weak it is. A human can overcome the gravity of the entire Earth, i.e. we can stand up. And as far as we know, this pervades the universe. We see it in motions of galaxies and stars. There is an issue here, though, and that is that so-called dark matter, there's more gravity than we thought. I think we don't fully understand this field, but I just wanted to think about the nature of it. It's very weak but infinite. The electromagnetic field is quite different. It's much, much stronger. I'm going to say by some measure, maybe 10 to the 20th stronger, something like that. And it's what gives substance to material. When you push on a tabletop, what's happening is that what gives it rigidity is small imbalances in this electromagnetic forces. If you want to think of the model of an electron, an atom with electrons, you could think of that. I'm not sure that's accurate, but that's another kind of a mathematical construct. And they have limited range. These forces are confined to this table. I push on, it's rigid, but I don't feel any electric charge, and I don't feel any magnetic field, but that's what's doing it. The next one is one you probably aren't familiar with. It's called the weak field. And by its name, it's very, very weak, has very limited range, and it has nothing to do with anything except radioactive decay. And then finally, the strong field, which in accordance with its name is, I'm gonna have to go for a second here, excuse me. You guys chat for a minute. Someone's at the door, I think.
Matt, how are you doing?
Right here.
Doing good. Just got back from taking Arlie to school, so
What
just trying to
school?
get. She went to Oregon State, or she's going to Oregon State.
Oh, nice.
Oh, how old is she?
18.
All right.
Yeah,
Ah.
18.
We learn more about each other.
Yes.
I'm just on my way back from the airport, so I'm not, my video is not switched on.
Gotcha.
And I've got so much going on with Larissa. We never stop talking, you know.
Very cool.
I'm happy to help. Your package has been accepted
right.
and it should arrive
Ah.
by October 4th or October 5th. So,
Excellent, excellent. Well, I thank you for all that trouble. And I must say, I had also trouble with UPS with a different group of mine at the University of Stellenbosch with books. So we're going to go DHL from now on. Did you go DHL?
no, I went to DHL. They asked for $500 to ship to you. So it was a little bit much for me. So, Federal Express charged me for $250 for the package. So it's just for shipment.
At least you guys must appreciate, you know, the challenges we have in Africa. It's incredible.
Yes, we certainly do.
Everybody's learning lessons.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what's making Africa experiential learning field, to use Charlie's word.
Yeah.
So Darinka, while we have time, do you have anything more to say about your trip?
Oh, I can talk about the Europe trips all the time. Well, that
But
the particular day that I mentioned, it was just a day in Budapest, and it was really lovely. I was in Vienna, and then I decided to just go for a day there.
I'm back.
All right.
Sorry, the repair guy showed up. Okay, so I
It's always
continue.
good that they show up.
That's right. So let's talk about fields made by humans. I'm gonna have to put this phone away because the door is alarming when he goes in and out. So this is generated by human behavior. And I think it's probably most like the strong field. It's so powerful that it overrides everything else for humans, I believe, and we have evidence for this. It's what caused Challenger to explode and so forth and so on. And it's very short range. By that, I mean it's acting within the range of human interactions. Since it's about humans, it doesn't affect anything unless you're interacting with a human in words or actions. So it's strongest in teams, and that's why we work at the team level. Teams are working together every day, and they're interacting with both words and more powerfully their deeds. And when you're outside the team, you're probably completely unaware of what this is. But if you walk into the room with a team there, you'll soon feel the feel and understand it and be influenced by it. It's really important thought. The social context field is generated by human behaviors, including what you say and what you do. And the primary focus on this field is the leaders. And there's basically three types, I think. Hierarchical is the most influential usually. It's the leader of the team. Technical people who are very, very good have lots of influence. And there are people who, by nature of their personality, are very powerful. It's propagated by the tribe. I call the team a tribe here because we're so tribal, with shared storylines. This is a big piece of it. And if you start to dissect any team, and I include, for example, political party or any tribe, you'll pretty soon start to see the storylines they're sharing. And if you don't share them, you're going to be ostracized. So what's interesting about this is the social context storylines are necessarily adopted by the members because they need to feel respected and included. So the nature of this force is powered, again, first principles, by these very deep needs. I put respect here because that's what the word people often use, and inclusion. So if you look at, for example, the actions of Donald Trump, I think it's driven entirely by the fact that he doesn't feel respected. You find it in the movies with the mafia people. The biggest sin you can make is to not respect somebody. They kill you if they don't feel respected. So let's think about this. Let's reflect on this for a second and see what you think.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I apologize. I am September. I'm the whole month. I'm at the United Nations General Assembly, and what really comes to mind every day when I'm there that everybody wants to be respected. So and this is foundation of the any diplomatic discussions, any communication. So it's basically the core of the diplomacy. And the thing is, it has to be authentic because
Yeah.
people from all, it doesn't matter from what culture you are from or what location you're coming from. You can see through other people. You can feel if the respect is authentic or not. If you pretend, if you just say the right words, and if you know sort of the script, so to speak, and if it's not coming from the bottom of your heart, people can feel it. So that's the challenge, especially in diplomacy. Yeah, you can teach someone to say the right words. How to teach people to really make it authentic? That's where the secret sauce is, basically.
Well, I like the go back to the analogy with the physical fields. Can you fake gravity?
No,
Can you fake electromagnetism?
no.
And I'm looking and chronicling this in newsletters now. China is acting with a belligerence that I've never seen, and I think it makes no sense except that they don't feel respected by the West. And Larissa, you're right. I think the West mouths it, but it doesn't come across as believable. And in fact, I don't think the West believes it. I don't think Americans accept China as an equal nation. Haven't for hundreds of years. It's,
We all have to, sorry to interrupt, we all have to learn it. We don't have any other choice. If we want to survive as humans on planet Earth, we have to really master it. There is no other way.
so the social context field, I believe, has to have these elements.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you. Nat, comments on this chart, Darinka?
No, it's really amazing to me how you compared it to the fields and how it actually makes sense. So it just makes everything actually the whole model being linked in nature, like not something that someone has just invented artificially.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
it's time to get on our feet.
Any comments?
Oh, I heard
Yes,
Drinka
I
say
would-
it's time to get on our feet.
It is time to go on our feet.
Yeah.
On your
Right, then
feet.
I'll make my comment. I'll make my comment then. Just tell
Okay,
me when I can start my comment, Charlie.
you're gonna stop. You're gonna stop doing your exercises in the car, whatever they are. So I'm going to now make a cleaner connection than I had in the past with behaviors and social context fields. So when you express authentic appreciation, there's the word, Larissa, authentic appreciation. With gratitude, I appreciate you for. You create a social context field of mutual respect and open, honest communications. I believe this really helps a lot with another really important thing, which is to address unfortunate realities. When people feel cared for and respected, they're much more likely to say, you know, the truth of the matter is, this solar system just doesn't work. This thing is a failure. We should quit now. Or the truth of the matter is, this worker you just hired can't do the job. We should do something about it. Or truth of the matter is, you can't keep drawing the salary you're taking. The company can't afford it, whatever it is. So that's the connection between that behavior and that social context field. Addressing shared interest, which is to take action on what do they want that I can want for them also. I believe this is the most important element in negotiation. And what this does is you create a social context field of willing collaboration. And the most important thing is it gets you what you want. It looks like you're focusing outside, and you are, but what it does is get what you want because it's things you want also. And then the appropriate inclusion. This is a very deep need. I know some of you like to reflect on my story of being excluded from the local party that I hate to go to and getting mad about it and creating a situation where I couldn't escape it. Anyway, I welcome you as a member of our team and tribe, and I should say as a full member. And this creates an energizing environment, absent unnecessary anger, because when people feel excluded, they feel angry and they act it out. Rigorously kept agreements. You know that I'll do what I said, or I'll renegotiate before breaking. This is incredibly efficient and builds trust, and you don't worry about others. This is, I think, so important. If you run a business or team with this, and you don't have to even think about the fact is not going to do what I what he said he's gonna do, he's gonna do it. I just don't have to spend any energy on this. And if he can't, he'll come back and come up with something that works in lieu of that thing. Address unfortunate realities. Having the courage to face the truth and respond. A high-functioning environment, responding effectively to difficulties. The other side of that is to just ignore these things and they do not go away. 100% committed. I decided to put this in what I'm going to call kids' terms. And this is what I did an interview with someone writing a children's books. And she asked me, how did I come up with the courage to repair Hubble against the direction of the administrator and the head of our budget? And I said, truth of the matter is, this is an expression I've had since I was a child. Be sure you're right, then go ahead. And what's the test of right? The main test of right is it in the broader good, not just to benefit yourself? So the difficult we do immediately, the impossible takes a little longer. No tolerance for drama. There's two simple strategies. For a victim, you turn complaints into requests or forget about them. And for drama, you own your role in creating the mess. And this collectively directs energy to what has to be done instead of caught up in these drama states. This is about misdirecting energy. Clear accountability. It's a choice. I choose to be accountable for what I do or fail to do. And there's another piece, if I had more space, or ask others to do. And this keeps focused on the results you're accountable to produce. This idea of focusing on results. So this is the inquiry now. What social context field do you want driving your team? What social context field do you want driving your negotiation?
Can I comment?
You just did.
Okay. I really want to share with you what happened during the last week.
Sure.
And it's, for me, it's like a feedback for you, Charlie, about applying, the 4D thinking model and all the stuff of today, everything of it. So Larissa is very much involved and she's got contact with a lot of them, but be a Nelson movement, on the Nelson Mandela legacy in South Africa.
Yep.
So I've got these 35 students now on an online open university course about social entrepreneurship. But I don't know how to compare it. You have to think about Africa. You have to think about young people and what kind of exposure this is to them. They're scared, to go online and to be associated with people from 10 universities all over the world. So I thought of this, and then I mentioned it to my European team that's helping me to organize this walk early next year in South Africa. By the way, please take note of that, all of you as well. But anyway, I mentioned it to them. I wish I could have, personal coaches for them. Since last week, I have now 12 coaches in Europe who offered their services to take one or two of the B.A. Nelsons in South Africa. And I communicated to them, and they just can't believe it. They can't believe it that somebody's taking that kind of interest in them. And it's reflecting the respect that you were talking about. And, it's not just like expectations from them, but also showing respect and empowering them. They can't believe that someone in Europe will take note of them and would like to personally be connected with them. And all of this is like creating this field, the social context for performance. And that's what I want to share with you guys. So the other professors online from the other universities, I mean, the group in South Africa is the only one not university students. Only one. People will never get to university. So they take a special interest in what's going on here because this is the only one at grassroots level, you know, what they teaching at universities. With this movement, we are actually doing it at grassroots level. So they take a special interest in this. So all I'm saying, there's a lot of connection and a lot of spin-offs from this feedback to you.
Good. Thank you, Nico. Anybody else want to comment on this slide? What do you think of this? It's useful?
Very much so. Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, it's
Sorry, I was trying to get myself off mute there, Charlie.
Okay.
I like this slide. I'd also like a version of this with what was before, because I think to me, those were as powerful as this view. So it was like the juxtaposition kind of helps me
Mm,
triangulate, I guess. Yeah, I found this session very helpful because I'm also trying to kind of summarize my thinking around how this all works, because that's how I put it in my toolkit. So, you know, trying to identify that elevator pitch, I call it the one pager, is an incredibly challenging exercise. And I appreciate you sharing your thoughts on this. But yeah, the juxtaposed version of this would be really helpful. And I really appreciate you putting this together.
Yeah, and Charlie, if it's possible, second on Nat notice, really, I feel the same way. Thank you, Nat, for expressing that. But I
Well,
feel
hopefully, you know, if you have feedback from Shane.
I feel it would be helpful if you would put what is really behind that, the blue, the green, and the all colors quadrants, the previous slide, which, yeah. So if you would just have it side by side, so to speak, that would be really nice.
Back to these, the four colors.
Yeah,
Yeah. These two slides back to back.
Nat, I will need your help to really translate from my from what I'm trying to say to that. So you see yes, you see those, you first showing the black and white
Yeah,
in each quadrant, and then it's covered by color, right?
yep.
So it would be nice to have both versions side by
Okay,
side.
okay, so have that color come first, then these two things. Yeah, I can do that. Okay.
Yeah, that would be great, because when we see this version on the screen, we're trying to memorize
You're
what
trying to
what's
back it up. Okay.
back it up.
Got it.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you. I'll
Thank
do that.
you.
So this is a core process, AMBR. I don't know anything that's quite as potent as this, to take an issue or problem, something, and begin by focusing your attention. And I've been thinking about this, again, many people do this without naming it such. I don't think you can land an airplane if you can't do this. Or let me say it differently. I don't think you can land an airplane 100 times flawlessly unless you can focus your attention. I don't think you can play a professional sport if you can't do this. I don't think you can solve a physics problem if you can't do this. It's just that people do it in very short time scales and very focused on some thing, and they don't step back and realize that's what they're doing, to focus their attention. So the difference is to take something where you're not thinking you have to do this and say, there's no way I'm going to get there unless I can get this degree of focus. And it's really just as focused as a pitcher throwing a ball or a batter, but to take and look at some dilemma and to clear your mind, to have nothing there but that. And then having that to now manage your mindset. And the way you do that is to analyze what you're thinking and take red storylines, name them as such, and substitute green ones, which include, in the most simple, easy case, empathy and accountability. The green and the orange, the two diagonals. That supports your behavior, taking the action, and then finally, getting a positive result will help you do this again and again and again. Comments or thoughts?
If I may, very quickly, it's just when I learned the AMBR process, many thanks to you, of course, Charlie. Only thanks to you. So, so I start questioning the multitasking sort of admiration for multitasking, because it doesn't look like there is such a thing like a successful multitasking. You either really concentrate on the task and really put with your
Yeah,
with your
absolutely.
mindset really deliver the results. There is no such a thing like multitasking, in other words.
I
I'm
think
just really,
most
yeah,
people think it doesn't actually exist. It's
Well, that's confirmed by neuroscience anyway. No such
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, they say that we actually can be better in switching between tasks, but the brain
Yeah.
cannot do two things at once.
Yeah.
And then it's also a question, even if you can really quickly switch between tasks, every time you return to the task, it takes some startup time.
Yes, there's a workshop slide on this. It's called attention lag. It takes time to get your full attention moved. So you never getting the full CPU functioning in a computer metaphor. You're right.
yeah. Thank you, Charlie.
And then inspired by that, he asked me the other day, where's the AMBR in the context shifting worksheet? So there it is, very explicitly. You bring your attention to outcomes. And what we tend to bring our attention to is a situation. We ruminate about the problem. And instead, at some point, look to where you want to go. Mindset shift, the behaviors and the results. It is AMBR writ large. And for people who aren't familiar with it, and we've been practicing this, you write down your situation, the dilemma, the problem, write down the outcomes, look at the emotions that are in play, and then once you do that, dig down for the red storyline that's powering that emotion, shift the thought, and brings a new emotion, do the 8 behaviors, and we talked about those, and finally say, if I do these things, am I going to get what I want? So this is something that's been buried in the book, and I only thought about giving this more attention recently. It seems to me this is something I've been overlooking. That's a really interesting finding, and this was motivated by the fact that I've been asked by a local outfit LASP to maybe help them. I think nothing's probably going to come of it. But here's the idea. Can you change an entire organization? Can you change an entire company? Is it possible? So in 2008, we had a whole lot of teams we've been working with. We had hundreds of these assessments. And one of my guys noticed that there was an upward trend in our first measurement. This was quite peculiar. He saw it there, and I calculated it, and I did what's called a student t-test. And yes, it's real. There's a 99.9% probability that there's actually an upward trend in the upward movement in the first time we work with a team. So what's going on here? So as you know, correlation is not causality, but I suspected we were doing this. We had worked with 10% of NASA's workforce. That's huge in a 20,000 person organization. 10% had been in 4D workshops. So I suspected that we were doing it, but I wanted to have a better scientific test. And the first thing I thought about was what's happening to NASA during this time frame. Well, about here, Bush canceled the moon program. There was not an external effect that was positive for NASA. In fact, I would say the workforce was being demoralized by broader things. And are we changing the social context field of the whole agency? So it occurred to me that at one NASA center, Marshall, we had engaged about 20% of the workforce. And the reason was that the local manager was their most respected project manager ever, a guy named Jim Odom. he was so respected that all the top management did this, and these people continued to be in top management jobs around NASA. So since we had engaged 10% of the agency, and that was the slope, I pulled out the Marshall data, and this was the slope of the Marshall data. So the slope was exactly twice as steep as the slope of NASA, with exactly twice as much engagement. So this is something I don't think I've ever seen anyone propose that could be done to change General Motors, to change Tesla, to change, the UN, the whole organization with this tool. And there it is. I think that's, to me, that's persuasive data that this can be done. So if you can do it, and by the way, how would I do it? Just to give you an idea. If I wanted to change the whole organization, what I would do is I would work with a pilot team or two with the standard processes and let them start telling people this actually works. And what I would do to change everybody, I think I would have a once a month, a 2-hour session in the auditorium to do a workshop module. And I would do the TDAs and IDAs organized by teams and let the teams take local action. And you could actually, the only reason this stopped, by the way, it's a good question. This was so successful. Why did it stop? Well, we got a political appointee, Lori Garver, who decided that she hated me. She didn't even know me because I'm a successful white male. And she zeroed out my budget just out of spite. I think the other reason is I was good friends with the administrator, who she also hated. So by association, and he let her do this, which surprised me. That's a longer story. That's why the work stopped. And by the way, it'd been 12 years. I was okay to stop. I was tired. So comments, thoughts? I think this is amazing. Does this strike you guys?
It is amazing. I think the thing that I continue to struggle with, which you hit on at the end there, is how do you understand that you can't change others' behavior? How can you start to affect this type of change in others, right? Part of it is, I think, showing them effective behaviors and how that helps processes, but yeah, I'm chewing on that a lot.
I think if you do the whole 4D process with them, you're going to motivate them to change themselves. That's the trick. And then model it yourself. I think that the people who are, I'm going to use not the best word, fanatics about this, are the people who use it in their own life and discover it works.
Right.
Anyway, you've got to have management that wants to do this. So I did one more slide change just for fun. I was reflecting on this slide, which I think is quite incredible, to claim all of these could have been prevented. And you've seen this slide before. I believe this. And so I've diagnosed this in terms of 3 different social phenomena. There might be more. I don't know. I don't claim this is complete, but unfounded optimism promulgated by upper management to avoid punishment or inappropriate deference to authority. And I believe you could have prevented all of these. But reflecting on this, I thought what's maybe more interesting is each one had an unfortunate reality behind it that wasn't addressed. So let's go look at just this one aspect of 4D to address unfortunate realities. In the case of the shuttle, the space shuttle was not cheap access to space. That was a lie. And as it became increasingly evident this was a lie, people tried more and more management to make this true when it wasn't. In the case of Hubble, a crucial calculation was when they measured the mirror with a different instrument and found a half wave of error in it. They had made the measurement with the mirror tilted up vertically, and they did erroneous calculation to prove that that was the cause when it was wrong. That was, they should have looked deeper and said, they could not imagine the mirror was flawed. So confirmation bias. in the case of the Korean crashing, one person cannot fly a big jet. They knew this, they practiced in the simulators, but they did it anyway. The case of Tenerife, the garbled communication was not a takeoff clearance. And the second officer knew this, spoke up the first time, and then the second time stayed silent. In the case of the subway, once he's a minute and a half late, there's no way to make it up. He should not have tried and killed everybody. In the case of the reactors, the generators were not safe down by the seawall. They had that advice over and over. In the case of the MAX, bigger fans on engines on a plane that was so low to the ground was not straightforward. They almost technically impossible. They surely couldn't do it in half the time. And then to me, the most interesting, unfortunate reality is this important information is seldom acted upon. So that was just me playing. And I think this capacity to address unfortunate realities shows up. I've got another slide I'd like to show you that I think is interesting. It has to do with all of this peripherally, but it has to do more directly with another thing that I'm talking about, and that is the changes in the world that we're going to have to deal with from climate change. And I was reflecting on why some people hear that message from me so easily and some people don't. And so I got inspired to do this, but I carried a lot farther by a guy named Nate Hagen. And so I want you to think about yourself. What is your spatial span of attention? To some, it's just self. Next level is community, nation, world. Then finally, recognizing that we're in a biosphere with other species. That's the spatial dimension. What's your time dimension? Now, next week, next year, next decades, between 100 or 10,000. I recently put out a thing where I think that if you want to think about civilization, you should think in 10,000 year chunks. And so that's in my mental construct, but frankly, I'm more thinking about the nearer term because of the climate change. A single issue. We live on islands, and I was thinking about writing a paper about the islands. And I was going to write one, for example, there's the financial island. And the financial island runs the universe these days with their tool is money. They influence banks that have the central bank in their pocket. They are the stock market. They are the credit market. They're everything. And the interesting thing about them is they need growth to survive. There's the political islands. There's the technical islands. There's the islands of environmentalists. Everybody sits on their island with the beaches closed. The other extreme is systems thinking, which I think I try and do. Then how do you deal with things in terms of classifying? Is it binary, yes, no, they're good, they're bad, or nuanced? Certainty, are you often wrong but never in doubt? Or do you see things in terms of probabilities? Are you a blamer? Are you wondering about things or actually solving problems? You reason by analogy, that is, assume whatever happened yesterday is going to continue tomorrow, or reason from first principles, which I talked about. Live in scarcity, which is about taking, or abundance, which is about giving. And are you authentic, that is candorous, or live in persona, which is behind the mask? So I think this is just fun to think about for each of us. I said to myself, where would I put Donald Trump? He's over here off the scale in every single one. This is a Gedanken experiment for you. I hope you found this fun. I thought interesting. So the more people move over here in every way, the more likely they are to accept unfortunate realities, like the running out of energy or the climate change. So I think the more you are over here, the more you resist reality. And you get over here and you start to expand your openness to realities. Was this fun?
It is, yeah. Thank you. You're sharing your wisdom, Charlie. That's priceless.
Yeah, this is good. Need to chew on it. There's a lot
Yeah,
there.
there's a lot
Um,
here, yep. And it's 9:59,
Yeah,
so.
I really, there were so many good slides, and I hope you'll share these with us.
Yep.
And I think it'd be great to come back to these next week a little bit.
Yeah, I'm gonna go make the change you wanted, and Nate, I think you're right. I think it's worth going through these again. I think there's a lot of, everybody agree?
Yes.
A second immersion in this, there's a lot of material here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's
I
the condensed
agree if
version.
you can- Yeah, please share this presentation today, Charlie.
Lots of fun. If I ever got a job, we wouldn't have this because I'd be working, but since I have nothing better to do, this is what we get. Thank you all.
Really appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Have a
Charlie.
great day. See you next
Thank
week.
you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
all. Have a good day.
Charlie.
Bye.